I am Jakoywa. I love the Lord as my personal Savior, and I'm happy to be actually a committed member of Net Ministries Trust. I joined Net in around the year 1984. And how did I join? I knew some of the Net founder members who were already there, and then they talked about the passion that they have for our Nyanza region. By that time I had been born again, and I was actually a leader in our church, that is the Full Gospel Churches of Kenya. And all along my passion has been like really desiring that the people where I come from, and that is the Luo Nyanza, should taste and know this God that had brought in my life when I was in high school. Immediately when I got born again, I was really passionate concerning the work of God, and I realized that the church that I joined when I was at home, which is a Full Gospel church, had very few children, few young people. In fact, it was like a church of the old people. And I thought, no, that's not right. So I started going and talking to children, and being almost the only young man there, you can realize I was given leadership as a leader in our church for the youth. I went on to become the chairman for the entire Kisumu County, by then Kisumu District Full Gospel Churches of Kenya. And by then, of course, now I knew about that Net work is for evangelism. I became, the work that I was doing was like the center where every year actually, the Full Gospel Churches of Kenya under my leadership, our youth camp was now graced by the Net, the team. And we did many exploits. We saw God doing great work. And of course, as I was working and seeing all these things, God has, it keeps on making me to be very, very committed. And I think finally, by the grace of God, in the year 1989, I was one of the hosts of the entire yearly Net missions. It was being done yearly, and just during August, I think, once. So I became the host. And I think from there, my life has been Net. Even now, in future, now where I am now, committing myself as a pastor, after I've done many things for myself, it is the influence of the Net. Because if we talk about the salvation that I saw taking place for the young people like me, and also who now came into church and they made me their leader, it is the work of Net, young people who are from colleges and universities, that made us to really be what we are today. And that is why I've committed my life to be a Net Life member. Net, as I think it's good to know that we were talking about Nyanza evangelistic team. That is Nyanza, it was about just Nyanza. But as we talk today, Net has made leaps and bounds, and the effectiveness of Net can be clearly seen. I can vouch and say for sure that many of us who are coming, particularly from Nyanza and joining universities and other colleges, we can say many of us, or many of them, they came to Christ either in high school, and those high school likely that Net was there could be very, very likely. I have seen some of the people who became Net members. Some of them actually they came to know Christ through our evangelism. I remember, like me, I was part of it. By the way, I was so very passionate. I was one of the singers those days, and we even developed any co-host compose songs when it was difficult. One time I remember we were in game and we were in a marketplace, and there was nothing to there was the equipment were not working. That is when I composed a song that Makati Davi Yesu and Wareniwa. So I think many things because Net was doing. So one, Net will be remembered, and we need to understand that if God who chose it, the main thing is that people need to be born again. Many of us in Nyanza, Net will be given a crown that I was born again because you people came to our school. That one is very true. The other thing, Net, as we have kept the missions going, and some of those missions, at least Net has grown from what it is, that some of those missions now are just beyond just only talking about the spiritual life. But we have been involved. I remember those days, sometimes Net went to a process whereby we could have even medical camp and things like that. In fact, at one point, Net, I remember very well, like in Jackson's place. Jackson was my teachers in computer world. We started, a church was actually open. But of course, Net being a para-church, it has not been very easy to open churches just like that. But can I tell you that Net has grown to have every kind of personnel. Here I am, like I talk to you, I'm now currently the presiding bishop of our community church from all the way, and I can see many of us also who have been gone to school. God has called many of the Net members are holding positions in churches everywhere. This, I believe, is because of the commitment in Net. One of the things that I think is an achievement. The reason why I was also very passionate concerning Net is that I realized that in Lowland, when people are going to school, it was a statistics that when you are a learned person in Luo, then you are driving. If you go to the number of vehicles in the bar, it were many of the Luo professionals. I am happy that Net has proved that even those who are learned can be born again. We have genuine people in Net who, if we are looking at the way we are thinking initially that Luos cannot be born again, that now is a proverb that you cannot hold any water anymore. So that is because of Net. And now look at what has happened, because it is good for an organization to continue going. We are diversifying how Net can move, and one of those things, of course, when the leadership, and we thank God for the leadership of the Net, because it's a very dynamic leadership, then they came up with that now we can go to do something that has never been done by any organization which I know, which is mostly background from Nyanza, to realize that our land needs us to be there and even come up with the idea of leadership center. That is God. That is something that will make Let live in forever. The founders must be very happy when they see that now we are moving from what the things that were just a thought at the University of Nairobi. Now we are talking about leadership center. My prayer and my desire is that Net will do many things, even to be able to be financially and completely stable, which is possible. Because if you look at the number of the caliber of the people we have in Net, we can do anything. You can do anything, and I think we need to agree that apart from that, let's us use our resources, everything, financially and everything else, so that as Jesus studies, we can make the ministry be very relevant. Because one of the things that we must agree, if there is no money to have, that can cost, because mission is very, very expensive. If there's no money, then nothing really will take place. So I think we are in the right place. Net is doing great things. So I think those achievements are just few among which you can explain. It is through Net, by the way, that many of Kenyans who have gone abroad and they are Net members, they are still members, very committed. we need to think more. How do we use all these resources to see not just this K.L.D.C be the best that it can, but to begin to think that even how now can we economically uplift even our background, which was NAMS. So that was really the main commitment. Net at 45. Remembrance and celebrating something causes people to refocus. This celebration, it means that those of us, because 45 years, is a long time, by the way. most of the people who are now leaders. In fact, I think even some of the people now who are leaders, like I think Global Red, those are people like now. Actually, I was saying was 40 some whatever. So it means that they was not even born. Then this is good because celebration will connect the past with the present. Otherwise, it is important for this thing for us to celebrate, because if we don't, then some of these facts, some of this reality, because if you lose them, if the generation that is coming lose them and they don't even remember what was it? How did this thing start? That is a dangerous thing for any organization. Then it will be so funny that people will be talking about anything. This is an opportunity, actually. For if it is possible, all the founders who are there, somebody, they should be there, and then this is the best. I thank God for our trustees, led by Chairman Professor William. This is the beginning of documentation, which is so important, because when we don't document anything, we are not going to live here forever. The moment these trustees and these founders are going to go and there is nothing recorded, I can tell you, my brother, as you interview me, that everybody will come up with his own thing. And this is a reality which we must think and come, but we must preserve it. And I think celebration like this is actually, if there was nothing, you said, not just that we are going to eat, if there's nothing, this is very important for preserving what was there, connecting with what is here, so that we may not forget the core mission of Net. That I think is so important, because the way when the thing grows like the way Net is going very fast, you'll find that if you lose the core business of the founder, then that thing is nothing now. Yeah, people will say, Net, it is just that. By the way, Net is doing so many other things that sometimes I personally assume they are good, but when I come, I think this one we may be going wrongly, because I am not sure now. Are many Net members here because of the souls, or because Net is the best in organizing weddings? Are we here because when you are sleeping and you feel that your mom or somebody, your uncle is not born again, then you cry, or it is just the warmth of fellowship? These are things that when we meet together, then at least people will know that we'll come back. If you have been forgetting, now, core business of Net, we cannot forget it. And I think that is very important for this celebration.
Okay, then you showed me a very beautiful book. Maybe you can talk about it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's not just one, by the way.
Yes.
I wrote my first book in 2016. The 2016 book I wrote was The Furnace of Affliction. I wrote this because I realized my life was no longer private. And so The Furnace of Affliction, if you want to know who this Luke is, including his children and his wife, where he comes from, and some of the things that he has gone through, things that of course many of us cannot say in public, then you read my Furnace of Affliction. The reason why I wrote it is that the time came that I thought I was not going to live, but because I lived, it is because God made me to live. And I have nothing to fear or to hide. I know many of us, like when I got to be a pastor, there are very serious pastoral challenges that sometimes you feel like, can this thing happen to a pastor? Some of those things have happened to me. And you can read them there. Now, that was the furnace of affliction. Right now, after the furnace of affliction, I have written another book now, not this one, The Beauty of Suffering. I am talking about the beauty of suffering because the furnace of affliction will tell you how I suffered. But the beauty of suffering makes you have a lesson that has been taught to me, really, as an individual who is a leader. And that is there. So I realized those things that I suffered, if you have suffered them, God can make us go through such things in order for us to be useful. And that is why I'm boldly talking about there's a beauty in suffering. Many of us, when you are born again, I realized even there is a church, there's a church here in Nairobi called Stop Suffering. But I am looking at it differently. So people can read that book and you are free to say that this guy he suffered so much that he's not a Christian. But I know there's beauty in suffering. It is through that actually that I realize that as a leader, you cannot lead beyond the greatest mentor, the greatest leader. And so here today, I have these copies which I believe, I'm wishing that when you are coming to the launch, I will have a stand to display some of the books I've written. These books I'm writing these are not real stories, these are things that can be done practically and live. I am writing this book that you have found me displaying here, The Leader in the Footsteps of Christ, because I realize the leadership that God really trusts is that leadership that kneels. Jesus, he was the greatest leader, but Jesus knelt before his disciples washing their feet. Jesus had an opportunity he was God, but the Bible says he did not take advantage. Any leadership that deliberately take humility as some of the vices that we need to have, need to really read this book. In this book, I think I'm going to quote some, how do you call it? I am a charismatic guy, a man who was, born again, and those days, heavenly bound, spirit filled, going to heaven, the devil kicking. But I want to tell you that many of us, because of that kind of a thing, we have some vices that have betrayed Jesus. So this book talks about many of us who are so-called, particularly who have been called, we love platform over the people. We love to see performance over the presence. Sometimes we see, sometimes we have greed which masquerade as vision, control over commission, such kind of vices which actually betray Jesus. We have charisma, but there's no character. People love the title, and that's these days you find people talking about, I am Dr. Bishop Luke Jakoywa, Apostle what, and all these things. To me, I think they are not really important. In fact, what they are causing is causing people not to go to school. Because if you can be a doctor in the street and you have not even done anything, you don't even write a thesis, and you call yourself a doctor. So at the end of the day, it is the title that we are talking about rather than the ministry. So Jesus himself, this is a book that people should read. Then, in terms of an organization, because that is important, by the way, before I say an organization needs to live beyond its founders. And not just live beyond its founders. An organization needs to live beyond its founders and continue moving with the same vision, so that when you see something that will happen 45 years, like in this case Net, it should be done when you ask the founder member, like the late Ochingolom, for example, will tell you that even when they are gone, they say, surely, things are going well. Of course, I don't believe that sometimes there's this saying that, the founders, when I don't know, like somebody was saying recently that maybe when Nyerere wakes up today and see what is happening in Tanzania, then he can be very serious. But if they are seeing, I think it was just to emphasize that it can be very sad even for me. You started something 40 years ago, it is not what you started. The thing that you are talking about is not there. So this happens because of leadership. And if the leadership is a leadership of, eternal leadership where there are no transition, there are no new ideas, there is nothing, then definitely we have a problem. I am happy, actually very happy, to be a leader in the Net, for example, because it is in Net. Let me tell you something, my friend. You are talking, Net is Net because we are particularly that leadership must change. And I think that is the greatest strength that I'm seeing. I am happy also to say here, I'm the patron, particularly of the Far East. People know how Far East was started, and we thank God for our elder Gilbert. I was also part of the founding. There is a lot of dynamic leadership change, and I think that is what causes Net to grow. Because if you started something, you reach a point whereby you cannot think beyond. So you need other people to think. Now, the change of leadership which has been taking place in Net is something to be thank God for. And for me, maybe, by the way, maybe it is Net which also made made my founder, Bishop, where I'm working with, Bishop Danwood, to release the ministry that he founded himself with his wife, Magdalene Madarevali. They struggle actually. There's a problem of growth everywhere. We must do everything we can do, not only documenting it, but even if it is a slow process, that Net must still have its heart for missions and evangelism. We must know that Net is a ministry. That even in our organizing these things, there are spiritual things that we cannot forget. Prayer, the things of God cannot be done in a certain way. I am praying that we need to, take also prayer something very important. Sometimes nowadays we have these things like we are praying over online, which is okay. But I realize prayer is prayer. Because even here online, even the online, people who do think prayer is not so important, they are not there. This prayer actually, you can see, for example, I think I love what is happening with the Net morning devotion. That morning devotion is powerful, but tell me how many people are there. So it really makes me worried that if you lose the sight of prayer, that means you are no longer inquiring with God. Then mission also becomes something that is not the reason why people join. Then we are going to have a big problem in the future. So, but my prayer is, for so far so good, we have an opportunity to make Net better and better and better. And therefore, long live Net until Christ comes again.
Amen.